So remember, trauma is something that overwhelms our capacity to cope and respond. So animals in the wild, if they can't cope and respond in the moment, they cope and respond after the fact. So they release it from their bodies. Now, we humans tend to not do that all the time. We tend to hold on to that energy. And it's an interesting thing to reflect on. Like, well, why don't humans just, like, something bad happens, you just shake it out and then you're fine, right? And there's, we're socialized, we're supposed to be fine. We minimize what's going on. Sometimes it's not safe, right? And when we're talking about childhood stuff, if we didn't have a safe space to release the energy, cry, shake, express ourselves, right? We hold on to it. We hold on to it. And so if we're holding on to that stuff from our childhood, we never released it, right? Again, we can hold on to it and then, like, lead lives that, like, never have us confront it, right? We're going to avoid the situations that bring up those that bring up those feelings. But then again, Christmas, Hanukkah, holidays, whatever it is comes up, we're confronted with that time of year. And sometimes it can be hard to be in denial, which is why we love to drink or do all the numbing behaviors over the holidays, shop, right? So we don't have to feel any of that stuff. So, what can happen is that we hold on to that. And I'm actually going to take a pause here to ask you some questions, because we want to reflect on what we were taught to do with our emotions and our impulses in our family of origin. So I'll tell you a couple stories, and anybody who's done a workshop with me before, I apologize, because I tell this story all the time because I feel like it's so meaningful. I'm trying to raise my kids in a healthy family. And I will admit that before I had kids and I would see clients, they would talk about their parents, I was like, these parents are terrible. I had so much judgment for the parents. And now that I have children, I have so much more empathy for parents. I mean, I'm not meaning to let parents off the hook who are, like, really abusive or awful, but it's not easy. And, I've got two very rambunctious boys, and I'm trained for this. And I so often feel like I'm flailing at it. But so one day, my kids were 3 and 6. And my 3-year-old messed up the Lego building of my 6-year-old. And you do not mess with Sebastian's Legos. Like, he's very serious about his Legos. And so the scene goes like this. Sebastian's really mad at Marley, and he's trying to hit him. And I'm standing in between them, and I'm holding them apart. And Sebastian says to me, Mom, Marley messed up my Legos, and I'm so mad. And the only way I'm going to get the anger out of my body is if I punch Marley in the face. Now, why is there already some success in this scenario? Well, I'll answer that. He's naming his emotions. He's naming his impulses without shame. Okay, and so what I need is to teach my children how to deal with their emotions and their impulses, right? Now, look, when he first said that, I could definitely feel in me, like, how dare you? Like, we don't hit, and all this, like, ego stuff. Like, I'm a yoga teacher, I'm a therapist, and my kid wants to hit his brother. I felt all this shame. But instead, I acknowledged how he felt, right? I kept myself grounded and breathing. And I said, I'm all right. You can't hit your brother, right? But we have to find another way to get the energy out of your body. And so we got Marley to safety. And then with Sebastian, we tried a few different things. We tried pushing hands and growling. He tried screaming into a pillow, punching a punching bag. And he's like, nah, it's not working. A few minutes later, he goes out on the trampoline and he yells, Mom, I'm on the trampoline. It's working. So, I'm telling you this because I want you to reflect on your own childhood. I mean, some of you who are parents might be reflecting on your parenting, but don't go there right now. What kind of environment was created? I'm learning so much raising kids about that as a parent, I actually have to actively teach them about their emotional world. It's not naturally happening. My older son loves to talk about how he feels. So we do a lot of processing how he feels, and he's able to say to me, Mom, I know this isn't true, but I hate you right now. And he's able to hold how he feels without being super reactive. My little one doesn't like to talk about his feelings at all. And I have to gently say to him, if you don't talk about it or draw it or write it in your journal or go outside and kind of scream, it's going to be stuck in your body. And in our family, we try to normalize that we all have big feelings, and we all have big feelings that we might be ashamed of. I remember once when my older son hit his younger brother, which he does a lot, but this time he said to me, well, mom, my body told me to do it. You tell me to listen to my body, right? At which point I responded, I don't know if this is a good response, but I said, my body tells me to hit you sometimes, but I don't do it. And at which point my younger said, well, that's because you do yoga. And what I love about that scene is he knew I did it something to help me not react on my impulses, right? So part of being self-regulated is being in relationship with our impulses and our emotions without shame. And when we have unresolved trauma, that can be even harder, right? That those impulses and those emotions, we have a lot of shame connected to them. But I want to invite you to pause for a moment and actually reflect on this question of what were you taught to do with your feelings and impulses in your family of origin? What were you taught to do with your big feelings and impulses in your family of origin? And what I'll say is that, typically when I ask this question, most of the responses I get is I was taught to suck it up. I was taught boys don't cry or girls don't fight. There's gendered language around this. Um, Most people felt that they weren't supposed to have those big feelings. Kids are to be seen and not heard, is something that goes around that I hear. So some folks are sharing, quiet the feelings down, be stoic, absolutely. Um, Swallow them back in. That's a powerful image. Don't tell anyone because it'll make them hurt or feel bad too. Absolutely. And it's always interesting. I always invite people to think about maybe some of the cultural context of what we were taught or how what we were taught might be connected to our ancestry. If some of these were actually survival strategies for our ancestors. So I know, from my culture, I'm Lebanese. There's very much, it's a very tribal culture. People are together a lot. And so appearances really matter. And so very much we were taught like you always have to appear like everything is good. That was really important in my family. We need to make it appear like everybody is good. Um, so, think about why this might have been necessary. Most of us have in our ancestries um, trauma, right? Whether we're talking about like Holocaust or slavery or genocide or being the perpetrators of those things. And so our ancestors had to also develop survival strategies of like shutting down, right? Um, and those get passed on. Those get passed on. And that's important because, again, our parents did the very best they could, right? They did the best they could with the tools that they had. And then, our work is to figure out, what we need to heal from that. And I usually try to ask, like, who felt like they got tools to deal with their emotions and their impulses with compassion? And, over the 10 years that I've taught this, I've probably met like 15 or 20 people who raised their hands. And that's not a lot of people. um, but again, how do we have compassion for our families? And so I will invite you to think about what were, your parents or whoever was in your family of origin, who taught them? What were they taught to do with their feelings and their emotions? And what tools did they have? So take a moment to really reflect on that and maybe even jot it down or write it into the chat.